friends, and welcome back to the Photoshop Basics for Scrapbooking class. In today's lesson, we are going to be working with those shapes that we've touched on the last couple of lessons, and I'm going to show you one more really valuable thing you can do with shapes, and that is to add text inside of them. I often get questions about how to create shaped text, whether that's inside of a circle or a triangle or any other shape that you might create. And today I am going to show you the magic behind the scenes. It's very, very easy, and I can't wait to show you the process. So let's head over to the computer and I'm going to show you how to add text inside of your shapes in both Photoshop Creative Cloud and Photoshop Elements. Welcome back to my desktop, friends. Today we're starting inside of Photoshop Creative Cloud as per usual. And our topic for today is to add text inside of a shape. So the first thing we're going to do is create our shape, just like we did last week. So I'm going to go ahead and open up a new canvas. We'll just do whatever is first here. And let's start with the ellipse tool, because I think when it comes to adding text into shapes, the circle shape is the one that most people want to figure out. So let's start with that one. With the ellipse tool, which if your ellipse tool is not the one that has been selected, you just need to go over to your shape tool, click and hold down until the submenu comes out, and then select the one that you want. I'm going to be using this. I do not want, let's keep a stroke on it so you can see the stroke around the outside. 1 pixel, it's going to be black, and the fill can be white. So I'm going to click into the middle of my screen here in order to create a specified size. Let's make this one, let's go 3 inches by 3 inches. We'll hit enter and our shape is going to show up on the screen. Next, I'm going to use my move tool to move it wherever I want it to go. Let's put it in the middle of the screen. You can see that I still have the ellipse selected in my layers panel, and we talked last week a little bit about rasterizing or simplifying the layers and how that makes them no longer quote unquote editable. At least not editable through the shape menu. You can still edit them in different ways using paint buckets and erasers and all that kind of stuff. But using these specific shape tool settings, you can't change it after the layer has been simplified. So for this to work, you need to make sure that your shape is not rasterized or simplified. With the tool selected, I'm going to go ahead and click on my text tool. When I do this, a blue line shows up around the outside of my shape. I can change my text color to whatever I want it to be before I click inside of this, or I can change those settings afterwards as well. So we've got the blue line around the outside, and then when I hover my mouse on the inside of the circle, you can see that I've got this symbol, which would be the mark for adding text, with a dotted circle line around the outside. What that is telling me is it's going to create a text box in the shape of the circle, or in the shape of whatever's around my mouse. So if I click in here, it then creates my text box where I am constrained to the shape of my shape, or the shape of my shape. I guess that kind of makes sense. So from here, you can see that my text is exactly inside of the shape. I can copy this text and we'll paste it. And as I add more text, it's going to constrain it to the outline of the shape. When we hit enter, it closes everything in here, and then I can use my move tool, select off of it. It doesn't matter. The text is going to stay there. If I want to go back and adjust my text, or change what it says, all I have to do is double click on the inside. It'll highlight my text, and I can come in here and change whatever journaling I want to. Now, the layers are at this point separate. So you can see I've got a text layer, I've got a shape layer. If I click on the text and move it, it's still going to stay in that circle shape, but I can move it outside of my circle if I want to. So if you are creating text to go inside of a shape and you're actually going to cut that shape out, you just want to make sure that you select both of the layers in your panel before you move it, because then you'll move the pieces together. So there is our text inside of a circle. Let's click off of that. So let's say that we wanted to create text inside of a shape that we don't necessarily have in our menu. So we have rectangle, ellipse, polygon, line tool, and custom shapes, which you might have some custom shapes saved if that's something you've worked with before. But let's say that I wanted to create a text box in the shape of a triangle. Maybe I wanted this to go inside of some kind of triangular space, maybe a tree shape that I just want my journaling to be inside of. For this one, inside of Creative Cloud, we're actually going to use a different tool to define the shape. For this one, I'm going to use the pen tool, and this is a tool that does not actually exist inside of Photoshop Elements. So this is one of those things that's really different between the two programs. One of the only tools that Photoshop Creative Cloud has that Elements does not. And part of the reason for that is because the pen tool is often used for much more graphic design types of actions versus Elements that's going to be a bit more of a simplified program. So this one just isn't in there. But if you have Photoshop Creative Cloud, here's what you can do to create a custom shape for your text. Using the pen tool, you can click onto the screen to add a little blue dot, and that just is showing your starting point. Let's say I want to create a triangle, so I'm going to bring my line down to the bottom corner here. I need to create another point to the left. So it's just drawing the shape as we go. And then we're going to come back up to the very first dot where it fills it in with blue and click on that. So now we've got a completed shape. Once our shape has been completed here, we can now add text into it and it will be defined by the blue lines. So we can come over to the text tool, hover back in the center of our shape, and there's that symbol again, right? And when we click, it's going to add our text box with those triangular constraints. When we deselect, the line goes away, so we can have the shape there without the outline. If you want to have an outline around the shape to make it easier to cut out, there's one extra step that you're going to need to take. So what we'll do for this is we're going to create a new layer, because when we use that pen tool on the background layer, it's just almost embedding it into the background layer. So we need to create a new layer for our shape to live on. With the new layer selected here, we can then use that pen tool again to create our triangle shape. Let's go ahead and do that. And then once our shape is completed, we can right click on this and we're going to select stroke path. From here, we can select whatever tool. I'm just going to use the pencil and hit OK. And now when I deselect, you can see the shape is there. Still with the shape selected, I can then come over to my text tool, add in my text, have it go inside of those defined lines. And then when we select off of the shape, so let me go to the background layer, we now have our text inside of that custom triangle that I drew. This is often something that I will work with if I am adding journaling to a card or a paper where there's a shape already defined. I can use that pen tool to follow along the same lines until my shape is created and then add my text inside. I don't often add an outline to my shape, but I figured you just might want to know that in case you are cutting these out by hand and you don't have color behind the text to give you those parameters. Now let's go over to Photoshop Elements and do the same thing here. So we're going to start by opening a new blank file. We'll just do whatever comes up, looks good. And we're going to use our ellipse tool. So with this, I want to use, let's just go ahead and use a gray background instead of the white. And let's have our circle be that same 3 inches by 3 inches. When we click onto the page, our circle is going to appear. We can move it wherever we want it to go. Now, with our circle selected, we can come over to the text tool, and this one does not put a blue line around the outside, but you can see that when I have my text on the main background here, the little dotted line around my pointer is a square, versus when I put it inside of the circle, it changes to a circle. So that means that it's going to be constrained to the outline of my shape. So if we click in here, it's going to add in a text box, which let's go ahead and make this, you can see those words. It's kind of big. Let's go here. There we go. So if we go add a bunch of this in here, just so you can see that it does keep it within the shape. Right? And the only reason it's not over here is because because it was too long, but it does keep it within the constraints of that circle. We can hit the check mark to say, yep, that looks good. And then when we deselect off of it, you can see there's the circle and the journaling. Again, those are two separate layers. So you just want to make sure to select both of them, either in the layers panel or by just clicking and dragging and selecting the ones on the screen. And then you can move them at the same time together. Now this program does not have the pen tool, so there's not exactly an easy way to create some of those shapes. I think you might be able to use the star tool if you want to create a rectangle or a triangle. So if you use the star, change your sides to 3, change your indent to 1%, because apparently it has to have 1%. And then if you click and drag, and then we can move this, we do get a triangle shape. So you can make it work. You're not going to be able to have a custom looking triangle shape. Like it is going to be, let's change this to that light gray. It is going to be, a perfectly sized triangle. But there is the ability to have a triangle shape if that's what you're looking for. Again, we can go to that text tool and add our text into here, and then it will, add, let's change the color of our text to black. It will add the text in here so we can have those constraints once again. So there is a way to do triangles. It's just a little bit complicated. The easier ones here are going to be those circles and the if you do ovals or rectangles, squares, all those types of shapes. But you can also do triangles if you like. All right, so that is our lesson for today on adding text inside of these shapes. For your homework this week, I would love for you to create a couple of different shapes depending on the program that you're working on or within. Primarily, I would like for you to try the ellipse tool, so create some circles and add text on the inside of those circles, and try and create a triangle. If you're working in Photoshop Creative Cloud, then break out that pen tool and give that one a try. If you're working inside of Elements, then adjust your star shape to see if you can create the triangle like we did here. One last thing I will say is a lot of times I like to create layouts where I have a portion of my shape is covered by paper and the other portion has text on it. In order to make that happen, all I do is just enter a bunch so that the top portion is empty and the bottom portion is where the text begins. Or if I have, if instead of having the top portion or the bottom portion with the pattern paper, if I want it to be to the left or to the right, for the right side, I just do a forced enter on the edges here in order to get half of it without text. And for the opposite side, I do a forced enter and I add in a space until my journaling is about halfway across the element. So that's how I customize these to be able to add in pattern papers and embellishments and those types of things as well. All right, friends, we are going to be back again next week, and our topic for next week is working with the transform tool. This is a tool that you've seen me use a couple of different times in these different lessons, but I just want to refresh your memory on it and talk a little bit more about how you can adjust elements on your page using the transform tool before we get into layer templates, creating layer templates, and designing a full layout. I think that's the last topic, the last little mini topic we're going to talk about before we get into the bigger ones. So I will see you next week back here for that little lesson. Until then, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in